I've had to learn that when you talk about change, that you have to bring people along on that journey. A frustration can easily be, if you guys were talking about, let's say, launching a new division of Element 3, and you go in and you've been working on it for 8 months, right? And you get in and launch it into a leadership meeting and everybody freaks out or is like, I'm not with you. Like, that would be discouraging. So what you have to do is make sure that when you're working on, I would say, large transformation, that you're bringing everybody with you and know that that's going on.
Whether you're going to market through dealers, distributors, or some other partner channel, the mediated sale is complex. We call it B2B to X.
But the leaders in the industry are the ones who are making it look simple. I'm John Goff.
And I'm Kyler Mason, and this is Why You Win, presented by Element 3.
Brad Fruth is the Director of Innovation at Beck's Hybrids, and he probably has the coolest job at that company. What might surprise you is that seed companies often also have this B2B to X model that we talk about on the show. And so a lot of Brad's job is staying really, really close to the customer need and the dealer need, so that as he is moving through the company and helping managers think about how to bring innovative new services or products to the market, they are always farmer first. I hope you enjoy the show. Brad, thanks for coming on the show today. We're really happy to have you here.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invite, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
In person is a privilege. You
That's
guys
right.
are right up the road from us. So tell us about directing innovation at Beck's. What does that mean?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So our innovation group actually started about 5 years ago at Beck's. We went through a period of time where Scott Beck asked us to look at our 4 core capabilities at Beck's, and we called it a disruption event. And so there was some time spent around what we thought we needed to do in the future. And so this was one of those great ideas. And at first, when the whole topic of do you need an innovation group, it can be a little polarizing. And so what we had seen at the time was that there were a lot of people, it was kind of the trendy thing, to have an innovation group. And we looked at some other groups that had them in the space. And what we didn't want to do is that we saw some of them that thought an innovation group was, a bunch of whiteboards on a room, a bunch of IKEA furniture, and then unicorn ideas come flying out the back end. And I said, I don't think that's really what innovation is at Beck's. It's not something where you have a culture that, might be, if I could use the word toxic, that you have to take people out and do it separately. So what we had talked about is that, at Beck's, we pride ourselves on having a culture that promotes innovation from the ground up. So innovation at Beck's, really my primary job and the primary job of our group is to be internal consultants. So in a growing and scaling business, when you're growing by 15 to 20% every single year, it can be difficult to look at new things when you're just trying to execute on your primary job function. So what we found is that there was a desire to create white space and to really help these managers in the evaluation and implementation of new technology. Now, what it doesn't mean is that it doesn't mean that we have a fancy process. It doesn't mean that we have, a 4-step thing that we run everybody through. We meet them where they're at. So what I like to say is that, we will work with a manager on everything from ideation implementation. Some of them just want to be introduced to a startup company, or do you know somebody in the industry that does XYZ? And there's some department managers, as I say, that don't give me the time of the day. And all that is perfectly acceptable within our organization. So that's kind of our primary job function. Now, I will also admit, when we kind of rolled this out, what you didn't hear is that we don't do an investment. So, a lot of innovation groups are also, or maybe have a CVC that look at doing investment. This is an unpopular opinion, but we actually think that there's plenty of capital out there for businesses and companies that are making a direct impact to net farm income. Those folks don't have any trouble. And so what we like to do is sit in between startup companies and new ideas and the people that have money, and really be that voice of, what's working well and what's not working well. So as I tell people, we have a biased point of view. We like our go-to market. We like our model. And so we'll provide free advice on it.
So you're facilitating like an ecosystem internally and externally? Am I understanding that correctly?
Kind of, at Beck's, we are, high customer service, and we like to think that we have a lot of trust of our customers and our dealers. We take that extremely seriously. Now, I think that we have that because at Beck says I often talk about that we're a farm that happens to own a business. So when you start talking about how close are you to the customer, do you know the jobs to be done? How fast do you get feedback? Like we all have to eat our own dog food. A lot of us are involved in farming as well as the primary business. So because we have that, a lot of investment people that sit in an office and, as I say, eat avocado toast all day, they've never been on a farm in their life. And so what they're wanting to know is what are the trends? What are people going to think about? Is their value that they're proposing, is it real or is it fake? And people just I think they're just craving authenticity. And so there's some people that we give positive feedback on. There's some that we need to sit down and have a pretty tough conversation. We don't avoid those. And, again, we provide a biased point of view out in that marketplace. Now, just because we don't do investment, though, a lot of people are like, then why in the world do you spend a lot of time working with startup companies? And to be honest, it's either one, I want to be an early adopter customer at Beck's Hybrids, or two, we have 6 value adds that we provide that come embedded into our bag of seed. I want to embed you into one of those value adds to make them bigger. Because working with a startup company and a corporate partner, it should be 1 + 1 = 3. So you have to be honest with yourself on what you're really good at. And then you have to know what they're good at. And then can you put a product together that has a product market fit that's going to be, awesome for your customers? So it takes a long time to get there. What I just laid out to you in the strategy of our innovation team, I'll be really honest, is way different than what they told me originally when we started this. But it came through a lot of no's that we came to the point where we're like, this is what we're good at. This is how we're going to impact the market.
So if you're not measured by avocado toast and how much you eat, what does the company expect from you? Are there KPIs?
That's a great question. So we are not, because I'm not measured on investment or ROI of individual products. The conversations that I have with my manager are often what are the relationships that I'm building and the people that I'm talking to. So as a recovering IT guy, I never in a million years would have thought that the primary role of innovation is going to be meeting people. It's going to be building relationships. A lot of people internally know I'll talk to anybody at least once, right? And the whole time that you're talking with them, I'm trying to figure out what motivates you. What does success look like? How are you measured? And then if there are things that overlap with the things that we're trying to get done, or I have friends that are trying to get stuff done, like that's where great things happen. Sonny tells us all the time, and especially our sales team, always do the right thing. Okay. And if the customer rewards us with their business, great. If not, you still did the right thing. And when you build a long-term business over with long-term goals, those are the things that you do. So, I'm measured on the relationships that I'm building and how am I building into other people and other companies.
I think that is so reflective of Beck's core sort of value proposition too, right? And I think talking to people at the organization, they say over and over and over again, Beck's is about relationships. We're about relationships. And the fact that the director of innovation is measured, like his primary KPI is relationships, I would surprise probably most people who have a similar title to yours.
Well, if you look at what's going on in the market right now, especially within the ag market, it's a bloodbath, as far as CVCs, and people are like, wait a minute, these investments aren't working, so it's refreshing for us to know that we made the right choice in that it's not direct financial gain. Now, that's not to say we haven't been successful, right? But we have a lot of projects right now that are maturing where, the secret sauce is actually if you can figure out a way to work with a company and not exchange any money, then that means that there's enough value on both sides you can do that. And we have a number of projects where that's coming to fruition. So while some of our friends are struggling with, some investments that we might have done, right? And, as the market tightens, that's when actually it's a great time for us to hit on the accelerator.
So what are the partners that you're working with looking for when it comes to an exchange of value from you guys, like access, data?
So there's a couple different things I would say. One is we have an extensive on-farm research network. So they either want access to our agronomy trialing and on-farm research, right? Because we're also farmers. So if we'll go tear something up in a heartbeat, right? The second thing is, to be really honest, they want access, or they want our market access. Now, that is the last thing that we give. I will die before we give that up. But those are kind of the two things there. So it sounds really, really basic, but the number of partners that come to us and haven't even done like on-farm field trials is amazing. Now, it's difficult to do, right? You just can't roll up the lane of a farmer and go, "Hey, would you try, my smoke juice or whatever you got?" That is not an easy thing. So to have an organization that has some sophistication to it, that can run side by side trialing, that can help them refine that value proposition, that's what they're looking for. And then two is they want access to our market, which, again, is something that we guard extremely close to.
Right. So I'm kind of back to this, like the culture you described. You don't have like a process. How do you prioritize? Like you're meeting new people. You're an internal consultant to the organization. Like, how do you manage the list of opportunity, the people you need to talk to? Is it intuitive, or do you have a system?
Well, I am not necessarily an organized person, so organized chaos maybe is the best way to kind of put that. I have great people on my team that specifically know that they are the opposite personality of me to hold me accountable. A part of it is, so I've been at Beck's for maybe too long. I've overstayed my welcome, but in the process, like the relationships that I've been able to build internally means that I feel that I have a really good handle on what motivates our internal manager. So yes, I like to meet with them a couple times a year, but there's constant communication on what's working well and what's not working well. So having a handle on that, and then also constant communication with our leadership team, lets me know where I think I need to prioritize. Now, you guys have heard the story. Often I tell people I've almost been fired 10 times at Beck's working on number 11. The organization, part of my role is to also respectfully challenge. So if somebody comes and says, I think we need to do X, and I'm like, you are not thinking big enough. This is self-serving, or you're not really serving our customer. I think you need to be talking about why. They're relying on us to kind of do that. So we are balancing a finite resource that is our time. And then we are working on the projects that we think are going to make the biggest impact, or that are going to provide transformational change. So I have a folder in my desk drawer called the Dead Dreams folder. Okay. And if you don't have one, it's called the Dead Dreams folder. Everybody should get one, right? But when you're an old fart like me, the things that we might have pitched originally, that didn't get any traction, go in the Dead Dreams folder. And so you're always, working on, even though it's a no, that just means that it's a no right now. But, I had a conversation just this last week with somebody internally where I had to go to my Dead Dreams folder and pull out something from 5 years ago. And I go, remember this, like, let's talk about why that was a no. And so again, as the old fart in the room, when we work with people, the other thing is that there aren't necessarily new ideas. However, something around that idea might have changed. So it's, help me understand why you think the environment has changed and why this would work now. And let me tell you about all the challenges originally. However, you're more than happy to tell me that we're nuts and crazy and you think that you can do it differently. So we do the same thing with startup companies, right? Someone will be like, oh, we need to do X, Y, Z. And I was like, okay, I want you to do research on these 3 companies first. Tell me why they failed and then come back to me. Because oftentimes people, when they have an idea, have not done the right market research to know that this has been tried. Now, it was a different market. It might be different people. It might be a different product. But, help me understand how what you're going to do is different than this idea that's either in the Dead Dreams folder or, failed.
If there are, say there's a new potential partnership, or you're about to have a workshop with an internal team, and there's an idea bubbling to the surface. Are you the governing body of ideas?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So my team's success is actually when we're in the back of the room cheering on a person launching a new product or launching new research. We are merely the cheerleaders and the organizers internally. So I do very little projects by myself. All the projects are sponsored by somebody else. So, if there's, to your point, out of a workshop, if there's ideas or we do a design thinking exercise and they select something that we want to chase, we're working with that manager that is the leader and the sponsor to help them pull the resources to do that. So, our team, I'm very blessed to work with very humble people that know that is what when we've had success is when we're cheering on our teammates. And if we're doing our job, nobody knows that we exist. But you're seeing new products, new services, and new things roll out. that we might have had a little bit of a hand in or a heavy hand in. But at the end of the day, we are supporting managers. So there is nothing that I think that we're doing that should have Beck's Innovation stamped on it. You're going to see product, sales, research, production, processing, all those folks. That is their stuff. We're merely a facilitator that's here to help them.
An advisor, it sounds like, too. I mean, you've said jobs to be done, the voice of the customer and stuff like that a few times. I'm assuming you're like, hey, I'm cheering you on, but from the back, this does not sound like it fits a job to be done, or are we really thinking about the customer? So
yeah. So one of the most valuable things that we also did was we worked with our education group, because we have a phenomenal education group that does a lot of continuing ed stuff. And one of the gaps that we found is that oftentimes people are like, hey, let's take our best people, let's, put them in a room, let's ask them to look at something new. And then what was happening, though, unfortunately, is that those ideas either, they had already been tried, or there wasn't enough, juice for the squeeze there. And so we looked at that and said, we're not teaching the right things. So instead of doing that, let's teach design thinking. So we've ran for the last 3 years internal curriculum that, instead of saying like, what's the one thing that you would change here at Beck's? So instead of saying that, saying, let's teach everybody to think about how to do this. And then let's let that education, let's let everybody be empowered to do that. So they know if they come and want to talk to me to a project, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? Do you understand everything that you're impacting? And how does this change the customer experience? Those are the things that I'm going to ask about. And now I don't have to sit down and, be like, hey, that idea sucks, or no, we're not doing that. You want me to do a fix and you're causing the customer all this problems, or this is $1,000 fix that's going to cost us $1 million to implement. I don't have to do that anymore. So we have really tried to empower our organization so that those conversations are happening within the departments and I don't have to be there. So my group is 2 FTEs. That's it. It would be impossible for us to be the gatekeeper, and really we shouldn't do that if we're empowering all of our employees to solve these problems and fix these things.
So one of our strategy gurus is Roger Martin. We drink all the Kool-Aid, and I got this quote from one of his books recently that says, build processes to make decisions instead of processes that produce outcomes. And so when you said earlier, we don't really have like a framework, or we don't have like a process for these decision makings. You have all kinds of processes, right? And you have continuing education curriculum, and you have design thinking, and you have the jobs to be done framework, and you have, and we'll talk about like dealer, like design groups that you have. Those are all different processes. But what I'm hearing you say aligns with that really closely, right? Your processes are about how do we make good decisions, not we're going to produce a particular deliverable every single time.
Bureaucracy and all that crap.
Yeah. And so you bring up a good point. When I started in this role, I talked to some other people that had similar titles, and that was normally one of the first questions they had, like, well, what framework and process are you using? And what we didn't want is the old like stoplight chart, right? Like, your innovation only moves forward if you can save this many dollars or impact this many internal people. That is not Beck's at all. And so we wanted the freedom, really, to be able to do the right thing. And if it's impacting whatever the decision is, and we want to be able to do that. And we don't want it to be reliant on legal, finance, or HR to say like, well, here's a stop gate and, the spreadsheet doesn't look that good or whatever. That's what we were trying to avoid in putting all this in.
How do you decide then?
I do very little deciding. I do a lot of coaching. So again, I'm supporting managers. So, one of the big things that we've been working on for the last year with our research team is a lot of research around roots. And if you're a fan of Beck's and you click and subscribe to all of our YouTube stuff, there's a little plug, you will see a lot of stuff there. So we've been working with our research group to help them do that. So as we meet people in the industry, we were just on an international trip a couple months ago and met a phenomenal researcher halfway across the globe that we think is going to make some impact. I know that that's a focus, and I know what their goals are with that. It's my deal to source things and put them together in a package that I can present them and say, do you want to do this? They're making the decision though, right? Now, a little bit of the secret sauce is I might maybe put some money at risk, let's say, more than what they would, but that's a decision we sit down and work through it and talk about it. But that's how we're successful with those types of projects.
To keep pushing a little bit, you don't decide, but the organization has to decide at some level, like what we'll do and not do, right? Or is it just decentralized to a department,
It is
to a head,
decentralized to a department.
and things can just make their way to the market or to the customer through that lens?
That's the blessing and the curse that I will tell you that we have at Beck's is that our department managers get to run the departments as they see fit. Yeah, so there's not like a big meeting that happens every 6 months where we do this. We're also given the freedom that when we see an opportunity, we jump in front of leadership and do that. So, I brought up the investment thing. Our group also, there's some M&A stuff that's going on and a lot of moving and shaking in the ag industry. If there's something that comes across our desk and we think that, again, I can add value, we can, exponentially make that better, then yeah, we'll jump in and talk to leadership about it. But yeah, we are strictly supporting the organization. Now, when you work for a family-owned independent company, there is a gray area there. So we are, also looking as a family-owned company, how are we going to continue to serve farmers? And as the ag industry changes, but yeah, we do very little things that are self-serving to just the innovation group. It could be supporting a manager. I'll maybe add on to you on your comment to we're supporting leadership, right? As well as, they're looking to the future. But if we have something that we think is impactful, the door is always open to jump in there. Now, you got to be smart about how you do that, right? So you don't get eaten for lunch in the boardroom. But we learned through literally almost 100 no's in the first year what they wanted to do. And so Sonny has also always told us, watch what people do, not what they say. And so like you guys as Element 3 could say, we want to invest in companies. And if they bring 20 things in front of you and you say no, you're probably not really wanting to do that, right? So I spend a lot of time watching what people do, listening to what they say, asking good questions. But at the end of the day, action will tell you what motivates a lot of people.
I want to ask that question in the context of your dealers and customers. And maybe those are the same word and you should talk for a second about that. But I think what would surprise a lot of listeners to this show, we're mostly talking to people who make things with wheels and motors. Explain just really briefly how Beck's interacts with dealers to get to an end customer.
Yeah, so I would equate it to a lot of probably how the car industry works. We have a independent dealer network. We have over 1,000 farmers across, the Central Corn Belt here that represent us that are not employees. They are delivering that in customer experience to farmers. So it works probably a little bit like a car dealership would be the best way to describe it. Customers can purchase from us. It is not the same probably as running through a dealer. It's also how we've been able to scale as a business. So we're providing an income to these dealers. Again, they're not employees. However, we are looking for dealers that know how to provide a high-end customer experience. So, a lot of that I would say in the ag side is also hyper local. So, a lot of people in farming don't get up and move. That's not really a thing. So if you live in an area and you're like, hey, you're an upstanding person in the community, you've got 10 or 12 people around you that you think that, would purchase from you. That's a great way to, get into a dealership model. So also, I would also say from a sales perspective, what we've seen in the ag industry is that you cannot scale your sales organizations as fast as you want to probably. And then also there's a cost in there. So, most people that have a dealer network understand that and know that you can't deal or don't have access to the capital needed to do that. And we could argue probably you shouldn't do that. So it's been a very good model for us. It's no secret. It's been the single thing that has helped us achieve our growth goals, of 12 to 15% of growth every single year since the 80s has single-handedly been attributed to dealers. We have the same, I would say, conversations that lots of other people do. How close do you put them? How do you deal with maybe conflict? I was actually speaking with one of our dealer managers the other day, and they were saying that that's one of the hardest conversations to have is that, when you go to a dealer and you're like, hey, I know you've been a dealer with us for 30 years. I'm going to put another dealership 10 miles from your house. They get really ouchy. Every single time we've done that, it has raised both sales levels. So that competition sometimes is what people need to get out there and get after it again. So we run an annual business. You sell them one thing per year. So sometimes that's enough motivation where we'll put that competitive dealer we'll put a competitive person, next door. They'll grow in sales and the existing guy grows almost every single time. So there's just something about that competitive nature of salespeople that, when we take some of that away, then it creates a competitive. Not every brand does that, but we've seen some success in doing that. So our dealer team knows we're doing as much background on financial and personality to get that right match. But, we need to be growing by at least 100 new dealers every single year. And that's a huge part about our growth.
So part of your process, now we can kind of clip back into this idea of your access to the market through these dealers all the way to these customers. You have a sort of regular event that you run with these dealers. It's the design event. Talk about that.
We do a lot for our dealers, or at least we'd like to think so, because again, they're independent folks that if they don't want to sell, they don't have to sell. At Beck's, we are also, we're trying to manage our brand down to the customer. So just like a car dealership, right? You have a manufacturer that is trying to, manage that down to the customer level, as well as make sure that the dealer isn't really going to kill them. But we run a couple of events every single year that are mainly sales in nature. So we have a big sales kickoff, and then around Christmas time, we kind of have a event, as our sales season is winding down in this annual cycle. And it's kind of the last, go get them team. What are the things going on in industry that we need to do there? So those are big events. We've also worked some of our innovation stuff in there. So I would say partners that we learned how to trust, that understand the rules of engagement and aren't going to be idiots. We have done some events with our dealers where we're like, hey, as you're building out a full service dealership and Seed is a part of that, here are some other partners that we think are doing some really interesting things that you could potentially add in there that we've gotten to know well. I would also add, we're seeing that our dealers are becoming more full service. Seed is just one part of that. So they might also have a precision planning dealership. They might also sell some biologicals. They might also sell crop scouting and drone services. So at Beck's, those aren't all under our umbrella. So having that trust at the farm gate means that if Beck's is going to say, I think this is a good thing, that we mean it. And we're not, there's not some back end deal where everybody's pockets are getting greased. And so our dealers kind of crave that, what do you like in the industry? To your point, we also have a specialized group. So dealers can sign up to be part of this dealer business academy where they actually pay, and it's a professional development that runs a full year. So we actually run them in one of those sessions. We run them through a full day of a design sprint, and we pick a topic that is very pertinent to what they do. And there's two things that happen there. One is that they get to understand this process of how to approach a problem through the customer's lens. And two, we've also seen it build in empathy. So we can talk about order changes, right? The industry order changes just suck. And through the interview process, we bring in our supply people. We bring in our logistics people. We bring in our dealer managers. And now they get to hear what the order changes that they want to do, how it impacts our business. It builds an empathy around something that they never even thought about. And so what I love about the design thinking, and where I think some companies get it wrong, is that everybody is so focused on me and my group that it allows you to ask questions about what could be and then work your way back to it. So that's a design thinking thing that we try to choose a different theme every single year. We ran one this last time around our digital customer experience. And what do we think that they need? Because all of our dealers are also customers. So, as we look at, yes, we need to serve customers and we need to support dealers. How do we do this? We learned some phenomenal things that once again, you get to a place of trust that you can really start to pull out of them. And so we secretly also use it, right, as huge input sessions. Sure. I mean, because these are dealers from across the nation. We get them for a couple days a year where we can ask tons of questions. We can challenge them. They can challenge us. And those are invaluable. one, that we get dealers that pay for us to take them through professional development, and two, that they will, in a trusting thing, give us feedback that we would not get.
Yeah. And back to your earlier comment about being in a business relationship that provides value on both sides. In this case, you are paying them and they're selling your seed, but like the thing that you're describing is a literal business value to them. They're becoming better business people, and you are getting better market feedback than you could get at any speed for any price, basically, right? People telling you have all of your warts and problems. Yeah. When you think about those dealer business academies, is there one that stands out to you, or like a person that stands out as like most changed? You had to give a superlative to some person.
I don't know if there was most change, but the one thing from this last one that there was an aha moment. It actually almost came in a break. These sessions that we run with dealers, so most of us in the ag community, especially those at the farm gate, like they're in their pickup truck or a cabin. So to put them in a ballroom in a hotel for 9 hours is like, it's like going to dinner with your mother-in-law. Like, it takes all it can to hold it together, right? So it is very, I would say, mentally draining for these folks to put them in this environment and go through this. And it was actually at a break. And we were talking about like what digital experiences, like what are the things that you do that are, and I believe Ashley, our marketing manager, said like, she wants to make, addictive or fanatical fans, right? So how do we do that? And one of the gals made this offhand comment as she was decompressing, while she's having her 10th Diet Coke or something, and says, well, all my husband does all evening is sit in his chair, watch TV, and scroll auction websites. And I kind of looked at her and said, what did you just say? And so through that offhanded comment, she had inadvertently shared that one of the things that her husband really valued was this idea about buying and trading equipment. And so that was one of those like, hold on, we need to drill in on this, And so that was something like, okay, so how can we take this idea and how does Beck's apply? And is there something that we could do digitally now to enhance this maybe new offering of, is there an equipment exchange, right? Like, and so we're currently bouncing around a number of ideas in that space, but that was an offhanded comment made that all of a sudden somebody on the team said, hold on, we're going to jump on this. Through that, we were able to say, okay, hold on, there might be something here. So there's all those nuggets, but you have to be, again, even though it's exhausting, you have to be listening all the time. You have to be responsive, and you have to jump on things like that.
Don't give away any secrets, but like, what could you do about that?
Well, so we currently have a team at Beck's right now. We have a digital strategy team that honestly is going through this right now of, what is that going to look like? And what are the products and features that we need to do for the future as we're looking at, making some changes to our own internal system. Tech is very adaptable. And oftentimes it's not the software that's the limitation. In my opinion, it's the creativeness of the person designing the product, right? So, a software person, they're great people. Don't get me wrong. They write code. They'll write whatever you ask them to. I think the magic sauce in this is saying, okay, there's a lot of other places you could go to look at equipment online. Why would they do it with Beck's? Is it place? Is it people? What is there? And how could we enhance that experience? I don't have the answers for you. It's something openly being talked about. That's just one part of it. We have 6 value adds at Beck's Hybrids. One of them is a trip program. Why would you go sit on a beach with 6,000 other Beck's customers, right? We seem to have created these fanatical fans with trips that now people met each other on these trips. They now will only go on trips with each other. And the only tie that they have is that they're Beck's Hybrids customers and they're farmers. Can we take that same thing from a user experience? And are there other things that we could do like this that help us with
6,000 go on these trips?
I believe last year we had 6,000 people travel with us. Not all at the same time, but within about a 6-week period. Those are the things that when you're a customer service company that you have to think about. Sometimes, I'll be honest with you, even internally, it gets a little jarring to some people when you say we are a sales and marketing customer service company. They're like, no, we sell corn, soybeans, and wheat. I'm like, yes, we do. And we have good products, right? And I often tell people we have good products, we have horrible pricing, and great customer service. The value that we can deliver is unmatched in the industry. We have the highest customer retention, and we can make farmers more money per acre than any other company can. So we sell good products, but at the end of the day, people become our customers because of the service and the value that we deliver.
With all that said, who's not a good customer for you?
Somebody that wants to wheel and deal price and negotiate their way to zero. That is not a good customer for us. And there are many other places where they can be that customer. So it's no different than if you look at, the expansion of Walmart and Dollar General, right? I mean, I live in rural Indiana, and the joke is, we got more Dollar Generals than we do people right now. They're popping up everywhere, but they're eating Walmart for lunch right now, right? But they're playing in that price space. So you walk into a Dollar General, you hope the door opens and doesn't fall off its hinges, and there's somebody working the register. I love Dollar General. Please don't burn down my house. That's the experience, right? You don't walk into a Dollar General expecting the experience you get at Cabela's, right? Nothing wrong with either of those experiences. The same thing at Beck's. If you think that you're going to come in and negotiate your way through a big contract, that's not how we go to market. Our sales programs are our sales programs, and we treat everybody pretty much the same. If you're buying one bag or you're buying 1 million bags. Now, we have volume discounting, everything like everybody else, but if you want to come and throw your weight around and do that, that's not the customer that we're looking for. And there are other outlets in the ag market where we'll be glad to give you some other names, and we can do it. I'll give you another example. We've ran a number of projects. Everybody has the idea that we should sell seed through an online brand. There are a number of other people that do that. We've looked at it a number of times, and the leadership of the family says, no, that is not what we're going to do. We can't do anything there that anybody else can. And our whole organization, everything that we do, our sales training is all around high value products. So why would we get into that space? That's just how we look at it. And Sonny has told us multiple times, find out what you're good at and do more of that.
One of the things that we have talked a lot about is your commitment rewards program, which is that I'm not going to explain it to you, but this idea that if you will buy for a certain number of years, then you get access to tools, equipment, additional what you've called rewards. And I think that for that value, or rather that price sensitive customer, like very confusing. Like, why are you in the game? You're just inflating price so you can move money around. Your perspective on that, I think, is really interesting and different about how you can fit into a farmer's value stream because you've decided to go to this customer service full bore. We're going to help the farmer no matter what kind of idea, right?
Yeah. So our commitment rewards program is one that we take the most shots, with from our competitors. It's often the most misunderstood product that we have as far as our value adds go. The whole point of the commitment rewards program, and Sonny calls it our shareholder program because our customers, are our shareholders, is that we want to have the highest retention of customers in the industry. So if you reward us with a multi-year deal of business, which, by the way, you don't know what the price is going to be in year 2 and year 3, then we will allow you to share in the value of bulk buying, is essentially what that is. Farming is a highly capital intensive business. And so when you're looking at things like, $1 million tractor, $500,000 semi, to be able to save 20-30% is a really, really big deal. And so people that aren't in the program, and so focus groups and everything like that tells us that people outside of the program that don't know anything about it use the words like gimmick, giveaway, and things like that. People that are in the program use the word, high value, loyalty, and trust. So for us, what we have to do with that program is be able to adequately explain how it relates to your farm and how it's going to make an impact. So yes, if you are looking at a new, Ford pickup truck, you will go to a dealer and find a certain sticker price on it, and that's the value that pickup truck is. If we can deliver that for 30% less, and you're going to give us your business for 3 years, that's a value exchange that most people are good with. I don't remember the exact stat. It's something in the 70 to 80% of all of our customers are on a multi-year deal because they've seen that value, especially when financial times get tough, like what we're going into right now with low commodity prices. There's, if you are looking to keep your own working capital, let us do that for you. Now, again, we're asking for 3 years of your business. So if you will reward us with that, then we will do this. So it's often, again, misunderstood, but it's one that can bring high value and high impact. Now, you also, again, I mentioned we have 6 value adds. That is one of them. As a salesperson and a dealer, your role, especially when prospecting, is to be asking a lot of questions to understand which one of those is most applicable to them. So there are some people that listen to this or that listen to commitment rewards, and they might be used to negotiating a deal. They're going to hate that. However, they might want our replant program. They might like all the free research that we do from Practical Farm Research, and they might want to sit on a beach in January, right? So not every customer values the 6 value adds. Not all of them value them the same. So what our dealers and our salespeople have to do is listen and know how they can be valuable. And so again, I would not recommend any of our salespeople or dealers lead with commitment rewards. It's going to be a bloodbath, right? However, there are some people that if you know, hey, we're thinking about trading tractors, and it's like, okay, part of this deal, we can work with, either green or red, and here's the value that we can deliver if you want to look and do something bigger. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine. I don't know if that explains it well or if that just confuses everything, but it's very misunderstood. And again, it's not gimmicky when people use the word value that are within that program.
I think you did a great job explaining it. And also I think your point about the dealer being the front line and understanding the value that the customer is actually after, again, just goes back to your training that you're putting back into these businesses and helping them succeed as Beck's partners in the ecosystem.
Yeah. And I think you guys probably know this as a business. Not every value add that you provide does every customer, put value on it. And so you have to be able to decide what that is. And then, how do you help them, and how maybe there's a new value add, but I can't go in telling you I'm going to give you free car washes if you drive a motorcycle. Like that's not going to work. Right. So
free car wash. And
do you drive a motorcycle?
No, I don't.
Well, maybe you should go get one. Today's a new day.
Thanks for the advice.
There you
go. Appreciate that. I'm going to send my wife this podcast.
We have had a few convos with people in the industry, and I think you're interested.
My antenna are up.
There you go.
So what are the other value adds? You've listed a couple.
Yeah. So we have our replant program. So if anything happens to your seed, whether it was your fault or not, we will replace that seed for free. We have our commitment rewards program, our Practical Farm Research program, which is we're doing research in 10 to 12 locations, all agronomy focused, not product focused, and taking it all to a return on an investment. We have our farm server application. We have our TRIP program, and then we have a robust treatment program. So all of the seed that we sell is treated because we know that will protect that seed and provide value to you. So those are kind of the 6 value adds that we have at Beck's Hybrids.
Great. So this show is about like why you win. I'm curious. You've talked a lot about, I think, the ingredients to that. Where are you losing aside from like the price conscious negotiating type of customer? Like where are you not winning where you should be?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've been spoiled with geographic expansion through the last 10, 15 years. I would say, there are still brand loyalty is a thing in ag, right? And so, there's people I know that work on farms that have John Deere tattooed on them or Case IH. Like those are, the equipment side is also fiercely loyal. There are brands out there that have similar followings. And so those are ones that, no matter what we do, they're going to buy that brand because, that's what their dad did and their grandpa did. And that's what we're doing. So those are ones that we also maybe don't do as well with.
But your play there is like you're adding more dealers. You want to have a local presence where there's great relationships.
So, it's a pretty fierce competitive market on the dealer side. Yeah. Now, our competitors also can't really decide if they're going to do independent dealers or not. So there's some wishy-washiness there. So consistency for us is our friend, is that we've been farmer dealer. We're going to be farmer dealer. We're not really changing there. This might sound really simple, but we do what we say we're going to do. And when you're competing with publicly traded companies, they change direction, sometimes quarter by quarter, sometimes year by year. And so that consistency at the farm gate, the consistent message, even though we're not the cheapest and there's not some funny business that happens that maybe there does with other folks, I have seen dealers come around finally and been like, look, you guys keep showing up. Okay. You keep visiting once a year. I still get your stuff. And I've told you no 10 times. And then they're like, what is going on? Right. Or what's in the water is the comments that we normally get. So there may be Beck's Kool-Aid or ice cream. I don't know what it is. It's delicious, but you should try some. It's amazing. But I hear that often in our outside locations is that, our people are consistent and Beck's does exactly what they say that they're going to do. So those are two areas probably that I would say are challenges for us.
Thinking about that description of commitment and consistency, it speaks to the values of the people that you are selling to, certainly. And also, as a strategy question, just sort of in love with your willingness to make a choice, take a bet, and then live into that with a lot of regularity. And it sounds like Sonny and Scott have been stalwarts of, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to follow our strategy. We're not going to deviate from this thing just because we've got shiny objects, of which I'm sure there are many in the landscape. We know who we are.
I mean, I often describe Beck's as a farm that happens to own a business. Like when you are a farm, I would say people appreciate the integrity because when they're making those decisions, very often it's not self-serving. And whether we're launching a new product or we're not launching a new product, right? They're doing it because it's the best thing for the farmer. That's a difficult thing to describe. Only if you go through something like that, I think, can you truly appreciate it. So, the decisions that they make, I've seen time and time again where they've always given the customer or the dealer, they've let them have the value first, right? Our sales guys, we also go to market with a choices message. We sell a lot of different genetics and traits, some that come from us, a lot that don't. Our salespeople do not know the gross margin of those products that they sell. And I will tell you, there are wide differences in them. The reason is they want that salesperson to put the best product on the farm so that farmer wins. Okay. And then we trust that when we do the right thing, that the majority of them are going to reward us with their business. I'm not aware of too many other people, and I live in a bubble. Okay. I'm a Beck's baby. I've never worked anywhere else. I'm spoiled. I'm not aware of too many other people that do that and that say, we're always going to give the customer or the dealer, we're going to default on the side of them. So yeah, that's why I think when we make decisions that people are like, and we're convicted on them, it's because it is the right thing. And I think people appreciate that.
That's incredible that they don't know the margin on the seed.
You talked earlier about the hyper-local nature of the business. And I think hyper-local is something that I think a non-ag person probably wouldn't really appreciate. You could feel like, all right, like Northern Illinois, Southern Indiana, climate's different, the ground's different, that kind of thing. But it's way more hyper-local than even that, right?
Yeah, so I mean, the county that I live in, we have 4 dealers. Each dealer is a little different. One of the things that we also do is we team sell a lot on the Beck's Hybrid side. Again, there's a lot of brand loyalty, there's feelings, there's emotions, and there's personalities. And you might only have 50 opportunities in a farmer's lifetime to sell them seed. And so what we found is that you might hate my guts, right? I just rub you the wrong way, but you might like, my friend Bob. So we do a lot of team selling. It's the same thing on the dealer side, but a lot of these dealers, are selling in a 10, 15, 20 mile radius. And that's the opportunity for them. So, when we say hyper local, that's where it is. A good dealer for us, again, is an outgoing person, that is your typical sales person that's respected in the community. But we have very few people that are, selling amongst wide swaths. Now, we do have some dealers that do that. And instead of focusing on geography, they might be focused in either on a niche or a certain kind of farmer. But yeah, a lot of our dealers are selling in a region and an area, and that's the opportunity. So, I mean, we're talking counties at that point.
When you're selling in that hyper-local way with 1,000 different dealers, how many different dealers?
A little over 1,000.
Oh, yeah, right in there. You also have to have an internal mechanism. You've got agronomists, you got seed consultants, you've got people on the Beck's sales side who come in with those dealers in a way that I think reflects both the location in a really important way, and then also the expertise to know what product needs to go into what place, because you have so many traits and genetics and all that stuff.
Yeah. So I would best describe it. I used to do a lot of the IT buying back in my IT days. It's a lot like an IT, VAR type of relationship, right? I don't know how many there are. I should probably calculate that. But the 6 value adds, we also have, products, we have traits, there is every dealer has a slew of internal specialists that they can call, just like in the IT side, right? And so our salespeople, in my opinion, are good relationship people and then have all those resources. So a dealer should know. Now, they all come in for a new dealer training, a big 3-day event. When they sign on, it's overwhelming. They meet a bunch of people, but every dealer has a regional person that for every single one of the value adds, for accounts payable, for product, for agronomy, for all kinds of stuff, that is their person and their specialist that they can choose. So, we have a lot of tools to support those dealers. Again, they're independent. So if they want to go just absolutely tear down every door and need help, we are there. If they want to sell to 30 of their friends and that's it, we're there. Right. So there's an enormous amount of resources that are around them to help them succeed should they want to be aggressive.
Yeah. And your willingness, Beck's willingness to develop that capability and that support mechanism for the dealer, instead of just saying, all right, you're our sales arm, go crazy, and we'll be over here doing science and making seeds, I think is the handshake that is a real differentiator and reflects, again, that customer service mentality. We're going to service our dealers. We're going to service our customers. We're going to do the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, a dealer calling on somebody is better because they probably have a relationship. They know more about them than us taking an FTE salesperson, plopping them in there, not knowing what in the world that they're doing. It's the relationship side that you're doing. And so pretty much everything that we do, especially from a sales and financial side, we're also hyper aware of how that's going to affect our dealers. So we don't tinker a lot with our programs because you also need healthy, sustainable dealers as well. So you can't do things one year where you're taking away large chunks of income or affecting them in a way. I mean, we need financially healthy dealers, so we're also very aware of what that looks like and how we're sharing in that. We have a dealer advisory council that's done by region, a lot of feedback, a lot of stuff around marketing, about how we're going to help those dealers.
Yeah. When we do direct dealer research, that's one of the things that is maybe the most consistent drum that an unhappy dealer will beat is the OE is just wagging me all the time. The program's always changing. Their expectations are different. They're trying to squeeze these crazy margins out on me, and they don't understand my business and how it relates to their business.
Hopefully we've taken care of that, or we're at least we're aware of the levers that we're pulling and what the impact is.
Sounds like you have a pretty involved vetting process. How often are you turning down prospective dealers?
That's a good question. I don't have the stats around that. It does happen, and there's a variety of things. Again, we want upstanding people in the community that are financially sound. It's great if they have selling experience, and know how to do that. We are getting a pretty big slew of, I would say, competitive dealers right now, that are coming over, especially when we're going into a new territory. Those really aggressive folks that are hungry tend to be the first people that call in. So, I always said if I was going to be in sales, I would jump into a new territory because for the first couple of years, people are calling you, and you're just trying to do that. And after 2 or 3 years, then you're having to make outbound calls there. But I would say we spend a lot of time getting to know the person as an individual. So you also want to make sure that what they're telling you is authentic and true. No different than a job interview, right? So if you come in and you're like, oh, I got to make more money and that blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, let's sit down and do you know how to value sell? Do you understand what you're signing up for? Do you understand who we are, what our culture is? And does that align with what you want to achieve? So normally no's are something that happens around that conversation, just like an employee.
You guys have all kinds of different products, and even your product nomenclature is encoded about the genetics and the traits and all that stuff. One of the things that we talk a lot about is product launch, and through the lens of mostly organizations that have a lineup between 10 to 20 maybe 25 products. 25 would be kind of on the high end. You guys are way past that.
Right.
What's the Beck's Hybrids approach to launching new products?
That's a great question. And so I might be a little over my skis. So you'll have to forgive me if I say something wrong, fellow employees. There's been a couple things. We're very aware of how many products and SKUs that we have. And so one of our strategic capabilities we think is, how do you still have regional product, but yet have a national reach? And so, we still have the strategic capability of running small lot seed, and we have 15 to 18 different product selection zones, right? So we are choosing products, let's just say like Michigan, right? There are products that work really well there that don't work well in Indiana, that don't work well in Kentucky, and sure as heck don't work well in Arkansas. So our product team is constantly evaluating, like, what are the potential of sales and where do those right numbers need to be. One of the things that we've tried to do, so we have genetics and traits. Those are two things that come together in a bag of corn specifically. So the genetics, what our team has tried to do is, not only do we have a lot of SKUs, but we have turnover in those SKUs. So no longer are the days of a farmer trying something out for a year or two and a product living for 10 years. That doesn't happen. 2 to 5 years is roughly now how products are moving out. That took us 5 to 7 years to develop, by the way. So what they've tried to do on the genetic side is work off of families. So while you might not know what I'm just going to make this up, right? 6288 is, if you grew 6287, then by the numbering nomenclature, you'll know that this looks a lot like it. It's just the quote new version. It might have a new male or a new female. Also then with traits, so we don't build traits. We source them from our competitors and friends, our frenemies. That is another part of that component. So, we're able to do a little bit of matchmaking there. So those two things are why we have a lot of SKUs. And so product launches are either geared normally towards traits and new traits. So we're working with our partners so that people understand them. There was a time a couple years ago where I think 3 years in a row there was a new soybean trait that came to market, and it was very stressful, but everybody knew the value that those were creating. The trait partners handle a lot of the education around the trait side. And then through, field days, which are a big thing at Beck's, we're kind of handling a lot of those product launches. But that's kind of how we're handling it now, is working in families, and traits have helped to kind of get farmers educated, because no longer can they try a product for 2 years and then expect to then have it on their farm.
Yeah. There's a lot of sort of selling the invisible that goes into that kind of moment, because you really are literally selling futures, right? I'm going to sell you the seed, and it's going to perform in this way, and it has these traits and genetics that you sort of know about because you've seen things that rhyme with that. Back to your comment about customers' job to be done, their pains, their gains. Seems like what they're trying to buy, though, is control. Ultimately, the farmer is like trying to de-risk his purchase as much as possible. And one of the levers that they have is, well, that number worked before. Give me the same number again. And I think what you're saying is you need to break them of that habit, because the actual improvement year over year of the new product is actually better. It's like a meaningful difference.
Yeah, well, farmers are fiercely independent, right? And for good reason. But yeah, and I don't know if break them maybe is the word that I would use, because we love our customers dearly. So in order to do that, we have to be able to then deliver the value that we've promised. Okay. And that is something, a whole nother topic of conversation is, the ag tech community probably got in front of our skis 15, 20 years ago and under promised and didn't bring that value. So I would say, if we're going to do that, we have to do it in a manner that we can truly deliver that additional value. I mean, we have some dealers right now that, sit down with customers, and the trust is so high that the dealer picks everything, right? Everything. And then we have some customers that are like, no, here's what I want. Or I saw this guy at field day, or I saw this video, or my neighbor said this, my neighbor said that. So I think we can get there, but again, we have to be able to deliver incremental value, and then be honest with ourselves that we're delivering that in order to gain the trust for folks to do that. And so I think, when we talk about maybe messing with that or playing around with that, we have to be real honest with ourselves. Can we deliver that value over just picking?
Do you have the best job at the company?
Well, yeah, I have the best job at Beck's Hybrids. We get to look at a lot of new stuff. So my personality type is I need a little bit of flavor. I need a different thing every single day. Not only are we working in innovation projects, we're dealing with startup companies, but I briefly mentioned, we're trying to look at what's going to be new and where Beck's Hybrids is going. And that to me is very exciting. I would say I've had to learn that when you talk about change, that you have to bring people along on that journey. A frustration can easily be, if you guys were talking about, let's say, launching a new division of Element 3, and you go in and you've been working on it for 8 months, right? And you get in and launch it into a leadership meeting and everybody freaks out or is like, I'm not with you. Like, that would be discouraging. So what you have to do is make sure that when you're working on, I would say, large transformation, that you're bringing everybody with you and know that that's going on. But yeah, I get to swing for the fences. I often strike out and get told to sit back down, but it is an awesome job to have. And I often tell people we get to run around with not having the financial accountability. My fellow workers don't always enjoy, but yeah, it's awesome. I work for an amazing company in an amazing vertical, and we're very, very happy.
Yeah. I hope you only continue to almost get fired.
Well, yeah. We'll see. Scott Beck often reminds me what that number is. So
Does he really?
He'll see. He knows what the number is.
This isn't just your joke.
Yeah. Well, it's now turned into everybody's joke. So we definitely have some fun with it. We actually just had our, here about a week ago in the office, we had our next class of interns come in. And it's hard to believe it's been so many years ago that I started as an intern, just hired as a strong back to come in and help move a bunch of stuff. But no, it's been an amazing career. And I love what I do every single day.
Love it. Love it. That's a great place to wrap.
Thanks, Brad.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much.
Why You Win is presented by Element 3, a marketing firm focused on modernizing go-to-market strategies for manufacturers that sell through complex distribution channels. We help leaders solve problems across demand generation, sales channel support, and brand development.
If you'd like more from myself or John, connect with us on LinkedIn. And for more from Element 3, visit element3.com. That's elementthree.com.